Cyber reverse engineering skill set. With the various forms of cyber reverse engineering outlined, let's proceed to identify some cyber skill sets, experience and technical know-how required to perform any of the forms of cyber reverse engineering. The following are the required cyber skill set, experience and technical know-how for all forms of cyber reverse engineering, that is, hardware reverse engineering, networking reverse engineering, and software reverse engineering respectively. For hardware reverse engineering, you must have in-depth knowledge, experience and technical know-how in both hardware and electronic engineering. Since as a hardware reverse engineer, you will be required to either remove or replace a hardware component with a soldering iron. A hardware reverse engineer is also expected to have some in-depth knowledge in semiconductor device physics, as well as knowledge of closed-loop control and adaptive algorithms. You must also have good understanding of kernel-level coding, debugging, and device drivers functionalities. For experiences, a hardware reverse engineer is expected to have some level of experience in programming, specifically in macro and script development experience. Aside macro and script development experience, a hardware reverse engineer is expected to have experience in both macro photography and photo editing or annotation for the purpose of evidence gathering and report writing. For professionalism, a hardware reverse engineer is expected to have strong analytical, research, and problem-solving skills. For the purpose of report writing and effectiveness, hardware reverse engineers are expected to be result-oriented and as well as are expected to have excellent writing and verbal communication skills for the purpose of being able to succinctly compile and compose written reports. For the purpose of understanding and the ability to identify the various types of motherboards and as well as the ability to read a motherboard, a hardware reverse engineer ought to have in-depth knowledge in both 32-bit and the 64-bit motherboard architecture model, and as well as the in-depth knowledge in the ARM assembly instructions. Experience with application and technology used in electronic products such as MEMS, sensors, haptics, wireless, radios protocols, audios, autofocus, optical image stabilization, voice coil, other various motor drivers or controls, the USB, and other serial bus protocols is a must for all hardware reverse engineers for the purpose of being able to interpret the functionalities of any identified drivers on a motherboard. For the purpose of being able to identify and replace faulty electronic components, a hardware reverse engineer is expected to have both in-depth knowledge, understanding, and the ability to conduct a complete analysis of an overall system, subsystem, and specific ICs for electronic devices in the categories such as smartphones, tablets, hearables, wearables, smart home devices, and automotive infotainment devices. The ability to repair, disassemble and reassemble a cyber device is one of the basic requirements for hardware reverse engineers. This is because hardware reverse engineers are often required to either repair a faulty device, which in the process requires the dismantling or the disassembling of the faulty cyber device. The last must-have cyber skills of a hardware reverse engineer is the desire and the attitude to learn new hardware technologies and as well as to conduct hardware research findings in order to always be updated with the new and the current trends of hardware components and designs. To be honest with you, I admit that the required outlined cyber skill set and experience expected of a hardware reverse engineer is so demanding and so much. But on a more lighter note, the outlined experiences and cyber skill sets can easily be attained by either taking a hardware engineering professional course or through self-learning and research. So don't be discouraged. You can acquire all these required cyber skill sets of a hardware reverse engineer within the period of 6 months or a year. That is only if you are determined and willing to. It's important to note that this outlined cyber skill set and experience will not only equip and aid you to perform hardware reverse engineering, it will also equip you to be an excellent cyber forensic professional and a very good hardware engineer and a repairer. So for these reasons, I intrigue you to take a hardware engineering professional course. Note that this outline required cyber skill set for hardware reverse engineering is just to mention a few, since there are other required hardware reverse engineering skill sets expected from hardware reverse engineers. For networking reverse engineering, the following are the must-have required cyber skill sets, knowledge, experience, and technical know-how expected of a networking reverse engineer. One of the basic and the first required knowledge and technical know-how expected of a network reverse engineer is the in-depth understanding of transmission control protocol and the user datagram protocol. Having in-depth knowledge in both TCP and UDP will enable you as a networking reverse engineer in the identification of transmission control protocols and the user datagram protocols of a network. Still on protocols, networking reverse engineers are expected to know how to perform both transmission control protocol and user datagram protocol sniffing, eavesdropping, and the reconstruction of both transmission control protocol and user datagram protocol of a network. Networking reverse engineers are expected to know how to build and set up a networking lab for the analyzing and extraction of real-time transport protocol data from a voice-over Internet protocol network. The ability to analyze and extract real-time transport protocol data from a voice-over Internet protocol will enable you as a networking reverse engineer to reconstruct original messages of a voice-over Internet protocol from the extracted real-time transport protocol data of a voice-over Internet protocol. Another required cyber skill set of a networking reverse engineer is the in-depth knowledge, experience, and technical know-how of a network penetration testing. Also, the experience and technical know-how in networking protocols, and networking security infrastructure are all required and expected of a networking reverse engineer. The last must have networking experience and technical know-how expected of a network reverse engineer is the use of network traffic analysis tools like the NetFort LAN Guardian tool, the SolarWinds network traffic analysis tool, Wireshark, and the NetFlow analyzer, just to mention a few. Although the above outlined required networking experience and technical know-how appears to be so much, all can be acquired within a period of a year by either taking a networking engineering professional course or through self-learning, only if you are willing and determined. Note that the listed required networking engineering skill sets for networking reverse engineering doesn't represent all the required and the must-have networking engineering skill set expected of a networking reverse engineer. Having the following in-depth knowledge, experience, and technical know-how in networking engineering will not just equip you to perform a networking reverse engineering, but it will also equip you to be an excellent networking forensic investigator. For software reverse engineering, the following are the required software engineering skill sets, experience, and technical know-how needed to perform a software reverse engineering. The first and the basic must-have software engineering skill set required for the performance of software engineering is the experience and technical know-how in programming. In other words, the ability to read, understand, interpret, and to communicate with a computer via a computer language. Since software reverse engineering involves the act of reading to understand a computer language and its functionality, software reverse engineers are required to be proficient in most of the commonly used computer programming languages and script languages like PHP, HTML, Python, C#, Ruby, Perl, Pascal, Basic, Java, COBOL, C++, the C language, JavaScript, Go, SQL, the Swift language for Apple-based apps, just to mention a few. Being proficient in most of the commonly used programming languages and scripting languages will enable you as a software reverse engineer to perform any form of software reverse engineering on most of the commonly used programming languages or scripting languages. Note that the total number of officially used programming languages that exist in the cyberspace is approximately 9,000 programming languages, and just 50 out of the 9,000 programming languages are commonly used and the most popular programming languages in the cyberspace. For this reason, no one is expected to be proficient in all the 9,000 computer programming languages and the 50 commonly used programming languages in the cyberspace, as there is no record of any human being being able to speak all the world languages or 50 recognized international languages. But for the purpose of being effective and productive software reverse engineer, I highly recommend you to be proficient in at least 3 or 5 out of the 50 commonly used programming languages, but must have at least the basic concept and understanding about most of the commonly used programming languages in the cyberspace. Second on our list of the must-have experience and technical know-how required of a software reverse engineer is the in-depth knowledge and the deep understanding of firmware and binary disassembling. Since the knowledge, understanding, and technical know-how of a firmware and binary disassembling enables software reverse engineers to perform reverse engineering on a firmware binary-based software and a motherboard. Third on our list is the in-depth knowledge, understanding, and experience of the functionality of both a 32-bit, 64-bit, and the ARM assembly instructions and architecture. Having in-depth knowledge and understanding of the functionality of both 32 and 64-bit architecture and the ARM assembling instruction will enable you as a software reverse engineer to be very effective and productive in the performing of software reverse engineering on a circuit board or a motherboard. The advanced understanding of operating system terminals and Windows APIs is also recommended and expected of all software reverse engineers in order to be able to perform a reverse engineering on all the operating system platforms, that is, Windows, Unix, and Linux. All software reverse engineers are also expected to have experience in both SQL and NoSQL data storage solutions, and as well as the experience and technical know-how in Elasticsearch and analytic engines to include data implementation and designs. The sixth required software reverse engineering technical know-how expected of a software reverse engineer is the experience and technical know-how in security data characterization standards such as STEX, MAEC, TAXI, and Cyberbox, especially for the analyzation of malware and backdoors in a software source code. Also, the experience in networking, network protocols, and security infrastructure is also expected of all software reverse engineers to enable them to function and execute a software networking reverse engineering project. Another software reverse engineering experience expected of all software reverse engineers is the experience in malware analysis and identification, especially Trojan's malware. The experience in the creation and the maintenance of rules for the detection of malwares and malicious activities in a software source code is also a basic requirement for all software reverse engineers to aid in malware analysis, which we'll be having a practical lab session on as the class proceeds. It's important to note that the ability of a software reverse engineer or a software engineer to identify malwares and even a zero-day exploit is highly dependent on the in-depth knowledge, experience, and technical know-how in malware architecture, analysis, and functionalities. So I highly recommend you to take the study of malware analysis very serious, since about 99% of software reverse engineering is performed on the basis of malware identification. The 10th on our list of recommended and required software reverse engineering skill sets is the demonstrable experience in working with an open source or a commercial analysis tool like decompilers, disassemblers, debuggers, system internal utilities, and network traffic analysis tools for the purpose of malware reverse engineering. The last requirement and my recommended software reverse engineering experience expected of all software reverse engineers is the experience in enterprise level sandbox tools and the familiarity of edge and endpoint protection systems. Both the technical know-how and experience in the usage of sandbox tools makes it easy for software reverse engineers to operate in all sandbox virtual tools, since software reversing is always and highly recommended to be conducted in a sandbox tool in order to avoid the infection of a host-based operating system with a malware, that is, if the software undergoing the reverse engineering is injected with a malware. Just like the other cyber skill set requirement for both hardware and networking reverse engineering, this long-listed skill set requirement for software reverse engineering may appear to be very demanding, but from experience I can say that You can acquire all these required software reverse engineering skill sets through self-learning and determination, or by taking a software engineering professional course. So don't be discouraged by the long-listed software reverse engineering requirement skill sets, technical know-how, and experience. Note that having this experience, in-depth knowledge, and technical know-how will not only just make you an excellent and productive software reverse engineer, it will also make you a resourceful cyber forensic investigator, a cyber security researcher or engineer, a penetration tester, or a software licensing expert. So for these reasons, I encourage you to pursue and acquire these software reverse engineering cyber skill sets in order to be productive, resourceful, and functionable not only in the field of software reverse engineering, but also in other cyber career fields like cyber security, cyber forensic, networking engineering, and even in the field of hardware engineering. For the purpose of you researching more about all the required cyber skill sets, experience, and technical know-how of software reverse engineering, networking reverse engineering, and hardware reverse engineering, the following is an assignment I would like you to try your hands on.